YouTube is full of channels created by Stern fans. Most of them are just speculating on the information that relates to the show. We have the opportunity to speak with a person who actually has some actual knowledge of the Stern show. And besides his good looks, he possesses that one thing that most people don't have, actual knowledge. So let's bring in Shuli now and let's see what kind of information we can get out of him. He's agreed to do a series of these videos. Coming from myself as a fan, I'm going to ask him as many questions as we can, the tough questions, and see what he's willing to answer and what he's willing to not answer. Today's show is going to focus on Jackie, specifically how much money he was offered at the time he left the show. And I heard people calling Shuli Jackie 2.0. I don't know what that means, but let's bring in Shuli and ask him. Shuli, what's going on, man?
Thank you. If you could go to my site, pick up the Shuli Master. It's a parody of the Joke Master. It doesn't tell jokes. It just complains about its lower back being sore. How are you, sir? Thank you for having me.
Doing well. And I gave everyone a background how we met initially. Actually, the last day at K-Rock, I was introduced to you by my good friend, Michelle Jerson. Do you remember her?
Of course. I remember Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, she's still around. Her and I went to middle school and high school together. We dated for a few nights, and that's our connection. That's really how you and I are speaking here today. You started on the Win John's Job bit, and I want to speak a little bit about that. How did you actually apply for that?
Well, I had been calling in for some time, so they were kind of familiar with me, and I was familiar with them. I remember that they took the Gary love tapes, the I Want You Back tapes from Gary, and they put it to the song Philadelphia by Bruce Springsteen, and they just put clips of Gary's, drops of Gary from that video in the song. So I did the same thing. I took the song and I did a Gary impression, and I was begging for the job rather than begging for the girl to come back. I was doing like my version of Bowie Matt, When you lost John, you lost an employee and a friend. With me, you gain an employee. I'm not a friend yet, but maybe I will be, stuff like that.
All right. So at that time, what would you rank your professional life?
Oh my God. Maybe a 2.
What were you doing employment-wise?
I was working full time as a comic at that point, and moved back in with my folks, making about, I'd say, $140 a week. I worked 5 nights a week, 6 nights a week, and that's all I was making.
The bit that you're speaking about was a bit, but what about the back office technicalities? Did someone call you and actually offer you the gig for the week or something else?
Yeah, they reached out to me. I think it was Will. I'm not 100% sure, but somebody from the back office reached out and said, well, they actually on the air, they played entries and narrowed it down, and I got into the finals. And then they contacted me and said, hey, can you be up here for these dates? Because you're part of this contest.
Do they offer you any compensation for that week?
I don't think so. I think you fly yourself out. They may have. I don't think they put me up. I'm not 100% sure on that. It was a long time ago, and a lot of weed has been smoked since then.
In addition to not getting paid, you don't think that they paid for your airfare?
No, I don't think they did. I'm pretty sure they didn't.
After John's Job, comes time when you actually are employed by Sirius as the reporter that we know. What was the situation leading up to getting that job?
Well, they flew me out to be a consultant for a week to this news team that had all these real reporters, but none of them listened to the show like a psychotic fan like myself. So they didn't really know the show. And they had me come up and kind of break down the show for them. Who's who, what's everybody's role, what's the whack pack, how did Artie come to the show, who was before Artie, everything. And I basically did all that on my first day. And I realized that, I probably gave up too much too soon, snuck a recorder out the next day, and I went out to Times Square and started talking to people about Howard, essentially just doing crowd work. Whatever their answer was, I was going to make a joke about it. And the news director heard it when I got back, and she loved it, Liz Aiello. And she's like, we're putting it on the air. And after that moment, I was like, okay, I got to learn some of this stuff. I got to learn how to do this. I got to learn how to edit. I got to learn how to interview people. And that's what I did. And I was there a year before I got signed by Sirius. I got a full-time gig.
So were you technically working for Sirius Inc. or something else initially?
No, I was just there as a consultant. I mean, I was getting paid through Sirius, but I didn't have a contract with them.
Right. I mean, most employees don't have a contract. I know in the entertainment world, it's a little bit different, but what were you getting paid initially by that contract?
Somewhere between two grand, I think, every 2 weeks, which to me at the time was like $10 million every
Oh,
2 weeks.
yeah, I mean that's good money for that, especially it was a huge unknown. How many reporters did they have initially when you first got there?
Oh man, that boardroom was packed. I would say the total amount of people that were a part of Howard 100 News was probably close to 18 or 20 people. I mean, we had Langford, George Flowers, Ralph Howard. He used Lance Rodman was his name. This kid Phil. I love Phil. If he sees this, I love you, buddy. But I got to bust your balls here a little bit. He came up with this persona name, like for his reporting. And then after like a half a year into doing this, he's like, nobody knows who I am. Like, you get all these people on Twitter. Nobody follows me. I'm like, well, you're not using your real name. Nobody knows who you don't know who you are.
And you also had a Mets player, right?
Did we have a Mets player? Oh, I don't know that he was a Mets. Are you talking about Carl White?
I thought you had Mike Piazza.
Oh, no. Oh, Mike Piazza. Mike Piazza was his name, but it wasn't the Mets guy. No, it was a reporter named Mike Piazza.
Oh.
Yeah, but they were like, I would say there was at least 8 reporters, and all of them were real reporters. And here I am. I'm like, I'm not gonna do what these guys do. I can't do what they do. They've learned it their whole lives. So I just gravitated towards what I liked as a fan, which was the whack pack and the back office stuff.
It seemed like a total overkill in terms of the amount of people that were there initially.
Yeah, but I think he had this vision and he wasn't sure exactly what pieces were going to be a part of it to make it sound and look the way he wanted it to. So they kind of had to just whittle it down. Penny Crone, who I loved, was probably my favorite person to work with over there besides Lieberman. Lisa G is great. And so, all these people that ended up lasting through, this thinning of the herd, if you will, they ended up giving the sound that he wanted, I think.
Ultimately, you transitioned to employment in a different capacity because then we start hearing you on the air. How did that transition go?
Well, during the Howard 100 News, Lisa and Langford would usually come in with headlines. I was never on that rotation unless one of them was out. They would ask me to come in, earlier because I didn't come in at the start of the show. I didn't really have any interaction with the show. My job was a newsman. I did my stories. I clocked out. I went home. When it changed was after Artie left the show, when he was done with the show, Tim Sabian came to me and was like, listen, I'm talking to them about letting you write, for the show. I think it'd be good. And you can, maybe get in there and on the air and do some stuff. Because I had done, some whack pack updates and stuff, and I like doing it. But nobody knew I did all these impressions because I never really did it on the air. I was nervous going in there. You don't want to bomb in there,
Right. You've heard of 112 Inc., right?
Yeah.
Do you know why it's called 112 Inc.?
No.
Isn't it because it's Howard's birthday? Is Howard's birthday January 12th?
All right. Yeah. No, I didn't know that.
Is that his birthday?
I believe so.
Yeah. So the research that I've been doing is through the various lawsuits.
Is this a deposition? I feel like I'm at a deposition. Go ahead, counselor.
The research I've been doing is that 112 Inc. was the entity that eventually is getting paid the $500 million that people talk about. And then that money is eventually paid to staffers and the balance to Howard. It doesn't seem like you at any point was really getting paid through that system.
No, I didn't know that system existed till just now. So I was definitely not on that payroll.
And that's what the court records indicate, although maybe the compensation that's coming from Sirius to you is in that amount that Howard was getting, potentially.
Interesting. Go on, Your Honor.
I want to talk about salaries throughout this series of videos, but
where's salaries?
And I figured that we start with the person people are referring to you as 2.0, Jackie 2.0. Do you have any guess as to why they're calling you that?
Well, I assume it's they're making a connection between him walking away from the show and myself walking away from the show. But I legit walked away from the show. Jackie, I think, was doing his contract negotiation thing that he had done previously, and unfortunately, that time it didn't work. And so, as much as may seem to people that he walked away, I think he kind of they called his bluff, I guess, and they just were like, okay, you want to hold out forever. For me, I wanted to go. I was ready to go, and so I left.
We have some audio from Jackie's book. I want to get your opinion. I know you weren't working there at the time, but just in relation to what he was getting paid, what was offered, the actual amounts, because there's been plenty of speculation. And then eventually we're going to compare it to some of the salaries being paid today. Let's listen to the first.
My final year on the
portion.
show, my base was just shy of $578,000, a fantastic salary. And it made me crazy that adding or losing stations didn't affect my wages. I had been there 15 years. I wanted to be involved, to be a partner, however minimally. If Gary came in and said, hey, Wolf, today we added Toronto and Montreal as new affiliates, I wanted it to affect me, to affect my compensation. Our successes should have put a few more shekels in my pay envelope. It certainly didn't have to be a lot, just so the rise and fall of our show affected me. If he came in and said, we just lost Dallas and Indianapolis, I wanted that to affect me too. A few less shekels in the envelope. It was like I was playing a game and they were saying, give it everything you got, but pay no attention to the scoreboard. Of course they wouldn't do that, because then I'd have known what kind of revenue the show was bringing in, and that secret was buried under Jimmy Hoffa. Like I said, my last salary was $578,000.
Year 2000, Jackie was being paid $578,000. A few years after he had negotiated his last contract, which he did leave the show for a little bit, and he wanted more. His contract was up. I did the math on 578,000. It comes out to about $880,000 in today's dollars, because it's been 20 years now.
Right.
So he's making, in today's term, about $880,000 a year. He's going to then start the negotiation. He finally hires an attorney. And did you ever have an agent do any type of negotiating on your behalf?
Never. I was my own agent.
How does Jackie's $578,000 compare to your salary when you actually left the show?
There is no comparison. He was making, I'd still fucking be there if I made that. I would not. We would not be talking right now. I'd be on a beach like this in real life. Like I said, for me, it wasn't a sure. Money is great, and if they bumped up my salary, there might be a chance that I would still be there. But I didn't leave because I felt I was underpaid. I left because I wanted to leave. I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with what I was doing in my life, and I didn't think more money would change that. I think it would kind of make me feel worse that I gave up on myself for a paycheck. But when you have a family, those are the tough decisions. Where's it going to come from?
It's odd, and maybe just a coincidence, but this is the 15-year mark when Jackie's speaking about him wanting to leave. And then Stuttering John at the 15th year mark did the same thing. Obviously, he moved on to something better. Yeah. What was the year that you left?
No, this currently right now is my 15th year, maybe closer to 16. But yeah, it was. I'd been there 15 years because I started 06, the end of 05, beginning of 06 is when I came over to New York, and I've been there ever since.
I guess psychologically, that could be some point in someone's life that people with ambition may, after 15 years, want to move on. It's just a coincidence that you, Jackie, and John both made the move at around the 15-year mark.
Yeah, I think 2 out of 3 of us definitely have ambition.
Another issue that you had spoken about was you offered half your salary with no benefits in order to stay. Was that actually true?
Yeah, that was true. It was offered to me by management, and I was contemplating taking it because, like I said, I left on good terms. I don't plan pissed. I wasn't mad. So I was okay because I still, for me, it freed me up. I can jump on, do the bits that I love to do, the puppets, update on the Whack Pack. I'm not tied down creatively outside of the show. I have more time to do these things, to travel, to tour. Yeah, and I was willing to take it. And then they basically said, well, if you take this, then you can't really talk about the last 15 years of your life. And for me, that was the deal breaker. Yeah.
When you're working during the show, are employees restricted from doing any outside work that speaks about the show?
I mean, it's kind of like, in hockey, they got unwritten rules, right? You don't hurt the star player of the other team. That's why they have enforcers on the ice to make sure you don't take liberties with the people who don't fight and don't hit. I think there's some unwritten rules there, especially when management changed, that things were going to be a little different. And, nobody was going to be going out and doing interviews and revealing stuff behind the scenes. And in all honesty, I mean, I don't think anybody should. Like, that's their operation, and how they run it is their business. For me, it got weird because I was wanting to go on different podcasts that my friends have, other comics, and promote myself as a comic, promote my tour dates, which I no longer had plugs on the show for. So it was my only way of getting, other than my social media, getting the word out there, and also getting the word out to a different fan base. I had been yelling out this window for X amount of years now. I wanted to start yelling out some other windows. And I always felt that I was a good ambassador of the show, meaning whatever show I did, I'd be funny. I wouldn't, give away secrets. I wouldn't do a show that talked about the show for an hour and a half, because that doesn't better me as a comic. That doesn't promote what I do on stage. And I would get shit for that from management for doing these podcasts. And the thing that frustrated me the most was they never heard them. They never, like, you didn't even hear what I did on there, and you're pissed. It's just an assumption. And it's just, the rap was, well, if we let you do this, then everybody's going to want to do it. My argument was, nobody else is on the road as a comic for the past 20 years. I am. This is what I do.
When I talk to people, they seem to be a little bit afraid that Howard may ban them from the show, or he's vindictive. And I just went through a list, and I think he's more of a forgiving person than most people think. The only people that he banned were Casey Armstrong, Steve the Engineer Freed, Gary Garver, Steve Grillo, Artie Lang, John Melendez, Al Rosenberg, Scott Salem, Rod Tarrant, the Reverend Bob Levy, Jackie Marling, Scott the Pace, Scott Einziger, Mike Ganji, and Doug Goodstein. Besides those people, I mean, he hasn't really banned anybody else from the show.
And could you blame him? You heard that list. That's his business. Everybody lives their life the way they live it. For whatever reason, I think there's people, this is how you move on. You either move on in life, or you hold on to stuff, and it becomes baggage and anchors, and it defines who you are. And everybody knows you as that guy who's still complaining about something from 20, 25, 30 years ago. At some point, you have to let go, and you have to move forward for your benefit, nobody else's, especially if you got a family. That will bleed into the family life and ruin everything.
The coolest thing about your situation, which I mentioned in the opening, is that it doesn't appear you have any type of contractual restrictions as to what you can speak about. Is that true?
Yeah, I have no NDA signed. I did not sign anything on my way out. I had nothing signed while I was there. I took no severance package, because a lot of the times, that NDA is attached to it. And I left. I left for the reason that, so I can talk about whatever I want to talk about. And my thing was, you guys are just going to have to trust me that I'm not going to badmouth you, that I'm not bitter. I'm not holding on to things. I wouldn't be in a position to have these opportunities if it wasn't for that guy giving me 15 years.
The list that I went through, those people may have an NDA. I think most do, or Howard just doesn't care. They don't have the contact, or they never were employee like you were. And I know you had mentioned that you don't want to be talking about Howard Stern, but I don't think that necessarily that's a good idea for you, because the fans are here and they're fans of you and the show, and we want access to information that really only you have. It's crazy to talk about. I'm not being facetious with that one. You actually are really the only one that I can think of that has information over the past 15 years that isn't bound by some type of agreement.
Yeah. And, I get it that people want information, and there's a fine line, I think, between sharing a passion about something with people and throwing dirt out there and just being a dirty person. That's not how I live my life, because I did for a while, and I know how my life was when I did live that way. And so I try to go out of my way to not throw dirt when it doesn't need to be thrown. I have no problem sharing stuff that I know that I think is worth sharing with people. But, as far as like the inner work and his thought process, that's a lot of things people go, why hasn't he mentioned you leaving? Why does he never mention people leaving the show?
Why is that?
Well, I don't know. You got to get him on this crappy YouTube show of yours. He will answer that question. I don't know why he does it. It could be that he just, it's a clean break. He doesn't want to mention. It could be that he thinks maybe nobody knows we exist. It could be that he's pissed. It could be that that's just how he ends things. 1, 2, 3, quick, easy, like Nam. He served in Nam. You don't learn people's names in your unit because they're going to be dead. So yeah, I don't know why. And his thought process is something I can't break down. I can just speculate. And I just think speculating is a douche move. It's like these guys that do these reaction videos. I'm going to react to a story I heard. It's like, why don't you produce something? Why don't you create something instead of being a barnacle on a business you can't get in because you don't have the talent, skill, or ability?
All right, so let's play the next clip, and I want to get your reaction to that audio.
On-air personality, an important driving force, and a charter member of the uncontested champs of American drive time radio, and maybe the greatest show on earth. For my new contract, K-Rock General Manager Tom Chiusano offered me a 6% raise to $611,000. I had decided my line in the sand would be an average of $1 million a year over the next 5 years.
At least
800, 900, a million, 1.1, and $1.2 million. A lot of money? Yes, but certainly not unfair figures. My lawyer suggested we take a long shot and asked to start the 5 years at $1 million, with $100,000 bumps each year, figuring that after the expected back and forth squabbling, we'd hopefully be able to settle for what I needed to make. Tom came up to $625,000. We didn't budge. Tom came up to $650,000 and said that was it, as much as he had to offer me. We came down to $900,000. That was the first week in January. Then, nothing from him for almost 2 months. On Wednesday afternoon, February 28th, at my lawyer's office, Tom reiterated that $650,000 was all they had. It was a 5-year deal with very decent increases. $650,000, $715,000, $765,000, $825,000, and $900,000. $900,000? Fuck! He also said that if I didn't sign by that Friday, the offer would be off the table. My lawyer said, okay, I'm advising Jackie to stay home on Monday until we get this settled. Tom said, okay, but I think you're making a mistake. We said, and we think you're making a mistake. I said, and Tom, Howard, of course, knows every detail of our negotiations, and you'll be sure to tell him I won't be in Monday, right? And Tom assured me, of course. I also emailed Howard that Sunday night to tell him I wouldn't be coming in the next day, or maybe never, if we couldn't come to a deal. After speaking to a lot of people, I took their collective advice and called Howard that Monday night. Continuing the charade, I told him that we wanted to negotiate, but we were hitting a brick wall with Tom, that there had been no communication in months. I assured him that other than that, there was no problem, that it was nothing more than a case of dollars and cents, and that we didn't think we were being at all unreasonable. We hung up nicely enough, neither of us knowing how it would play out. Of course, he had 100% control of how it would play out. Whether or not he'd already decided that the door is going to be shut to me for good by then, again, I'll never know. Initially, being off the show was much, much harder than I had imagined it would be. I had thought so long and hard about all the nuts and bolts of the situation, but hadn't realized what should have been the most obvious. Forget the money, the fame, the daily routine that structures your life, the sense of belonging, the perks. What I really missed was the actual show, our antics, and the incredibly stimulating workout my coffee-drenched mind got every morning sitting in that seat with my trusty Sharpie pen and my stack of paper, churning out lines like a factory worker, giggling and howling and basking in the one planet. It's not a normal situation. It was a wild wake-up call, but it was just something I had to deal with. I did feel so bad about breaking up the core team, but again, I wasn't trying to. No communication of any kind for almost 2 months after I had stopped coming to work. The first week of May 2001, I called my lawyer and said, I've thrown out all my resolve, all my logic, and all my reasoning. Sleep or no sleep, it's too weird. I miss it so much. I'm sure we've let it go too long, but just in case we haven't, please call Tom and tell him we'll take their last offer if it's still on the table. He called Tom and then called me back and said that he had left a message for Tom to call him. When Tom called back, he told my lawyer, after I got the message you called, I saw Howard in the hall. I told him that Jackie's lawyer had called and that he might be calling to take the offer. And Howard said to me, do we want Jackie back? My lawyer told Tom that was indeed why he'd called and that if the offer was still available, we'd take it. Tom said he'd relate that to Howard and get back to him with Howard's answer either way. I called Howard, left a message, and he called me back. After we fucked around playfully for a few minutes like we usually do, I said, I just wanted to make sure you know that my lawyer just spoke to Tom and told him that if the last offer is still on the table, we'll take it. Howard said, okay, thanks for calling. I haven't hired anyone else yet. We'll let you know. We never got a call back. Not even an email from Tom or Howard or anyone. Not to this day. I was all over the place. On one hand, it felt great to have stood up for myself and to again be the untied free spirit I'd always been. Most of the time, I had no regrets. I knew I had done what I had to do.
All right.
So this clears the record and clears the air as to how much Jackie was offered, really how much he turned down on the last day of the show for him. So in 2001, the final offer by Tom after some haggling is $650,000. And we're talking about a 5-year deal. And it escalates up to $900,000 in 2005. So in today's money, that's probably $1.5 million. Do you think Jackie made the right decision by turning that money down?
No, I don't. I love Jackie, but no. And I think he feels he made the wrong decision too. You hear it in that clip. You know, he regrets it. He misses it. And I mean, at the end of the day, what was he losing out on? $1 million and a half? Like, he was still making killer money. So yeah, I don't know, man. I feel bad hearing that because Jackie was some of my favorite times of the Stern Show. So he was a big loss, man.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess that's where the fans are coming up with calling you Jackie 2.0 because of the loss to the show. It probably has nothing to do with the money that you gave up.
Well, then in that case, thank you. That's a huge compliment. I will be Joke Man 2.0.
Eventually, as the sequence goes, Jackie's negotiating in early 2000, as you hear, and then he says, I'm going to hold out. He holds out, and he has a lot of reasoning for doing so. He says that his marriage, he wants to have time. He can't get up in the morning. But lo and behold, 2 months later, he starts regretting, and he emails Howard.
Right.
And he has his agent call Howard and say, well, if the initial deal is on the table, I'll take it. That's 2 months later. Based on Howard's previous experience, you knew as a fan that he wasn't going to have Jackie back, strictly because Jackie was being a pain in the ass for this 2 months. And it's an important lesson for a lot of people out there to realize that when you're negotiating, you have to understand the next best option. And there's an acronym for it. But basically, if you give up this deal, what amount is there that you're going to fall back on? And for Jackie, at $650,000, there's no job out there that's going to even pay him $100,000. So his next best option was below $100,000. And he did have regret. And he realized that. He was playing a hardball stance, but the attorney that was recommending him to leave the show, I don't agree with that advice. I think it was bad advice. And
I agree with you on that.
Yeah, there have been plenty of people that have come to me. I can't say who, but in similar situations where they want to get out, but I know that their next best option value is extremely low. You have to coach them on that sense. And here, Jackie, clearly by his actions, because now we're 3 months after, he now calls Howard and asks for a meeting with him, and Howard sort of blows him off.
Yet, at some point, I inexplicably wrote a heartfelt email to Howard telling him I'd made a blunder and really wanted to rejoin the gang. I never got any response to that either. But again, for the record, we asked for my job back in the beginning of May, and Artie Lang, my replacement, wasn't hired until that October. In fact, fairly soon after 9/11, when everybody in New York was so disheartened and depressed, I wrote Howard another very sincere email saying I really wanted to return to the show and that I thought the horrible tragedy was a perfect window for me to return, for us to reunite. That New York badly needed anything that would symbolize any kind of return to normalcy, especially anything that would lighten things up at all. And judging from the hundreds and hundreds of emails and people I ran into everywhere I went, even to this day, so many of the listeners were rooting for my return that it seemed like an ideal time to bury the hatchet. Let bygones be bygones, or simply tear down whatever walls that are in the way and make the show whole again. Just because it would have been a nice thing, a positive thing for the tri-state area. Though very well known to be greatly at odds at the time, Bill Clinton and Al Gore had sat next to each other at a memorial mass. So I wrote in the email, even Clinton and Gore are sitting side by side, putting differences behind them. Surely we should. Yeah, it reads pretty pompous now, but as self-serving as it may read, it seemed like a great idea back then, in the midst of those horrifying weeks and months. It was straight from my heart. I suggested that perhaps we should get together and discuss it. He wrote back to the effect of, we're not politicians, we're comedians. And that was that. Never addressing getting together.
I love Jackie. He's the best. A lot of people don't know this. In his defense, the second motive behind the hijacking was to get Jackie back on the show. A lot of people don't know that. The terrorists funded by Al Qaeda to bring down corporate America and the government and the banking system and kill all these innocent people, but also get Joke Man back on the show.
Yeah, I heard that. I think it was the fourth plane though. Only the hijackers on the fourth plane were fans of the show. They were listening down in Florida.
You can hear Muhammad Atta on the speaker going, Mama Monkey, right before they crashed into the thing.
Oh, really? Yeah, I never heard that audio, but I'll check that out. So Jackie is now, we're into September. This is 9-10 months after Jackie has been playing hardball. He tries one last time. He's now using 9/11 as an excuse to try and get back on the show. So
not too many, you got to give him credit. Not too many people would have the brains to take a national, almost global tragedy and kind of make it about themselves.
Yeah. And
beautiful.
It is beautiful because that tragedy was huge. It's the biggest in our lifetime. We're about the same age. And it inspired people to join the military, inspired so many things, and inspired Jackie to try and get his job back. Now,
there was a ricin attack in Japan. We should do a show.
So when he tries to get the job back, Howard blows him off again. And I want to get into in other episodes about Howard and his personality and things like that. But to me here, this is more of a business decision. Jackie's done. And what Jackie wanted was $1 million a year over 5 years, averaged out. And what they were offering averaged out to about $780,000 a year. It wasn't so much away from what Jackie really wanted, but he played hardball and went against him. And like I said, when negotiating, you got to know what your next best option is. You got to know that value. So Jackie, unfortunately, learned the hard way. But for you, your next best value is high. That's a good thing. And that's why I don't think that they should call you Jackie 2.0, unless, of course, they're referring to just the quality to the show.
Yeah, I listen, I agree with you. I think the fact that I was there for 15 years, that I worked with Howard, that I worked with Jay Thomas, Scott Farrell, these three giants in radio that do it their way and completely original. I've learned so much. I've incorporated so much, my confidence in myself, my ability. Like, I know I can do this. And that was one of the main issues of me not being happy, was while I was in a place that I absolutely love and has shaped my humor throughout the years, I wasn't able to do anything more than I was doing. And I wanted to do more. I wanted to do my thing. And it's it's the Howard Stern show. It's not the Howard Stern and Shuli show. And so all the power to him. That's his baby, rightfully so. I'm gonna take a chance, and I'm gonna do what I think I'm capable of doing. And so yeah, I agree. I think I had a little bit more upside going out the door than most people.
Before we end this first segment, I do want to at least tease or get your information on the validity of celebrity net worth websites that try and predict how much people are making and how much you actually have in total net worth. I did look you up, and there was the word million there.
Really?
Yeah, it did actually say 0.5 million. And I thought probably that's kind of accurate if you add up the value of your new estate in Alabama, your 401k, all your savings, your stock portfolio.
No, that's right. Hold on one second. Honey, we're rich. All right, go ahead. What were you saying?
So it's 0.5 million. How in reality, how close is that to the actual amount? If you sold everything today, would it be anywhere near 0.5 million?
I don't think so. No.
They also have salaries, and they speculate on the Stern show, and Reddit did too. The first one that we see is Benji Bronk at 100,000 plus. I don't want to go through this in this video, but just quick opinion. In mine, he's over that amount. Not necessarily much, but would you agree about that?
Yes, I would agree with that.
JD at 60,000. What do you think?
No. Higher, Bob. Higher.
Ronnie Mund at 60,000.
No, I don't think so. Well, that gets weird because, Ronnie's driving him. I don't know if he gets paid separately through Ronnie's company to drive him, or maybe that's factored in. So I don't know, but I think I would have to think, the guy's testing out toys in the most evasive way possible. So I think he's got to be making more than 60 G's. I hope so.
And I agree. There's many factors because Howard probably pays him separately from Sirius, but he is working as security at Sirius, and I'm sure you felt safe with him.
Well, now he's cybersecurity, so
he's probably just as effective on the internet as he is in person in terms of security.
Agreed.
Sal and Richard, $80,000 a year.
No, I think they're over that. Those guys are geniuses. They're great at what they do, and they deserve every penny they get.
Don't tell us your amount, but is your last salary over any of these four?
It's over all of them.
As a member of the Stern Show, you know that sometimes you may not be making huge amounts of money, but the fame level is extremely high, where you've probably you can have connections all the way up to the president, and you do. There have been, I took some tweets from when you left, and I just want to get your reaction to them. Donald Trump, and this is from his verified account, the Howard Stern Show lost one of its last great talents at Shalom Shuli. Congrats on the move. Do you realize that Donald Trump had tweeted congratulations to you?
I had no idea. If I did, he would have been episode 1 of my podcast. I would have had him on to talk shop.
Yeah, at least we have some exclusives on this show.
See, guys, he's not all that bad. Look.
Jackie Martling said, I heard at Shalom Shuli just quit the Stern Show during a time that our country has record unemployment. I don't care what you trolls say. It was a very wise decision. Good luck, Shuli. Call 516-922-WINE for a daily joke at 420. That's nice.
You know, I'll give you a little behind the scenes, a little exclusive. I spoke to Jackie a couple days ago about possibly doing a comedy show together. We're thinking of calling it either We Don't Have to Get Up Early Anymore tour or Shuli and Jackie Need to Tour.
Yeah, I mean, that or maybe even a financial advisory firm. I mean, between you two and your past decisions, clearly.
Dummy, schmuck, and moron.
The governor of New York said to you, tweeted out, I hear at Shalom Shuli has a New York lawyer with Italian heritage helping him with his show. As you can tell from my book, we Italians make amazing decisions during hard times. This show should turn out great. Buona futana, old Governor Cuomo said to you. That's nice.
That's very nice. I'm glad he took time between letting old people die senselessly to take time out to mention me. And he's right. My lawyer is as Italian as they come, and he has yet to let me down. He's undefeated with me.
The governor is entangled also in a sex scandal. Apparently, he had kissed one of his employees without her consent, and also offered to play strip poker with her on an airplane with her. Most of the networks are not covering that, but in the midst of all that, he took the time, which is cool for you, to at least congratulate you. All right, this one I didn't understand because I don't speak Hebrew or whatever language.
I'll translate.
Yeah, so can you read this one for me? Because I don't even know really what it means.
Mazal Tov, Shalom Shuli. Although I question if you are a real Jew, leaving a great job for no money and moving to Alabama, oi gewalt. You are as smart as you are handsome. You mishkeit. Tell your shiksa wife to give me a call.
So I would suspect most of the fans don't really understand. Mazel tov is what?
It's congratulations.
Okay, and then where's the other Jew word? Oh, oi gewalt.
Yeah, by the way, heads up, counselor, there's a ish at the end of the word Jew. Just giving you a heads up on that. I gewalt is like it's like oy vey. It's like you're in shock. You're like, oh, oy gewalt.
Okay. You are as smart as you're handsome. I get that. You mishkeit.
It's kind of a compliment. Mishkeit. It's like a nebbishy, losery guy. I guess Woody Allen. You can say Woody Allen.
Yeah, that's definitely not you. Tell your shiksa wife to give me a call.
Yeah, that's Yiddish for hot. Actually, it means non-Jewish.
Oh, your wife's not
non-Jewish.
Jewish?
That's right. That's why she's got the ring on her finger.
Shuli, this was awesome. The fans are going to appreciate the insight you gave and the honesty that you provided to us today. I'm sure we're going to do many more of these in the future, but for now, I want to thank you for taking time. I know your schedule is super busy, so I'm thanking you for taking this little time to give the fans something that we always wanted, actual information from an actual Stern show staffer. And I appreciate that.
Thank you, Counselor. It's always a pleasure and an honor.